Hey y'all, welcome back to the Book Stamp. My name is Kate, and today I'm going to be giving some nonfiction recommendations. I've been loving everyone's 2020 reading goals. I'm so glad that we're now in that time where people are releasing all those videos because I've just loved watching so many of them. One of the things I keep seeing on so many people's is to read more nonfiction. And I'm not going to pretend that I am an expert nonfiction reader. I ended up having less than 25% of the books that I read this year being nonfiction, and that's including poetry and plays. So I definitely don't read exclusively or primarily nonfiction, but I do enjoy nonfiction and I like reading a good amount of it. And I think I did read some really, really great nonfiction books in the year of 2020, and so I wanted to share some of my nonfiction recommendations with y'all, especially those of you who are trying to read some more nonfiction here in the future. So as I briefly mentioned, I do consider plays and poetry to be included in nonfiction, as that's how they're categorized in libraries and systems. I think it's a good branch for reading different forms of writing that can help sort of broaden your reading experience. And while they're not factual in the same way that nonfiction is, I still think they provide a lot of different aspects to the literary world that I think are still important. So I'm going to briefly just mention a couple poetry collections that I really enjoyed this year. The first being Lucy, Negro, Redux, which is a collection of poems published by Third Man Records in Nashville by Caroline Randall Williams. And this was actually performed as a ballet by the Nashville Ballet. And what I love about this edition of the book is that there's also a lot of components included about the ballet and how the creative team with Caroline Randall Williams sort of developed that to tell the story. And this poetry collection is basically centered on the idea that Shakespeare's lover was a Black woman. And so from this, you get to hear a lot of things from her perspective. And it was a ballet where the prima ballerina was a Black woman, which is not the case in any traditional ballets. So the main ballerina who ended up playing Lucy in the show talks a lot about that, and I really, really, really love this collection. And my recommendation for a play to read is A Streetcar Named Desire. This was in my top 10 books of the year because I just love it so much. Tennessee Williams is a fantastic playwright. This play won the Pulitzer Prize, and it is telling the story of Blanche Dubois, who is one of my favorite literary heroines, and really just packs a really, really powerful emotional punch in such a short story, and shows a lot about what plays can really do. And I also think this is a play that is very readable as a work, as a text as well. Now for your more classic nonfiction recommendations. The first book I'm going to recommend is 10% Happier by Dan Harris. And this is definitely not a book I would have traditionally picked up. It was gifted to me. And because of this book, I've actually started to incorporate meditation into my life and have found it to be extremely beneficial, especially as I was sort of finishing out my degree program. I found it extremely beneficial to help recenter and focus for the day ahead. And I find that this book really sort of takes a skeptic's approach to meditation, and really, from a scientific perspective, for me, really proved the value of that. And Dan Harris is kind of a lovable asshole character, and so it's kind of fun to follow along with his story. And what I really love about this is the back is actual helpful meditation practices, and I have a couple of them dog-eared that I go back to and use, so I found this very helpful for me. Next, we have Lab Girl by Hope Jahren, which I hope if you've been watching my channel that you are already interested in this book. This is one of the best science memoirs that I read this year, which follows Hope's life as she becomes a professor at the University of Hawaii, and tells a lot of stories about science while also teaching science, which I really, really love, because I really think we learn so much more about science when we focus on the how and not necessarily just the results. One of the other transformational texts that I read this year was The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson. This also won the Pulitzer Prize, and I just really, really loved the way that Isabel Wilkerson told the story of one of the largest mass migrations in American history by focusing on 3 individuals and by telling their stories and drawing parallels from their specific life and story to overarching aspects of the Great Migration. And I just really, really loved this book. I feel like I learned so much in this book without it really feeling like a history textbook. And Isabel Wilkerson is just a beautiful writer, and this book is something that I think, especially in the light of recent events, more people need to read. If you like more on the side of personal memoirs, then I would recommend Untamed by Glennon Doyle. This book has gotten so much hype across Bookstagram over the last year, and it's truly deserved. This book was really, really intriguing and well written, and I come from a very similar background as Glennon with a sort of religious upbringing, and so it was really, really powerful to see like the story of a queer woman told through that lens, and I just really loved it. I'm a goddamn cheetah, you're a goddamn cheetah, we're all goddamn cheetahs. So I think if you're really looking for that kind of self-helpy memoir style book, this is a good one to read, and she's not going to try and force you into an MLM. So if you really like true crime and sort of mystery thrillers, then I think you should read The Feather Thief by Kirk Wallace Johnson, which is a weird book. It is about the robbery of the British Natural History Museum, where this dude literally robbed like an entire collection of birds of paradise so that he could sell the feathers for salmon fly fishing ties. It's wild. It's a wild story. It dives really deep into this very weird niche of people and crime, and it's just wild and so interesting. I think more people should read it. It's really, really good. And the last book I'm going to recommend is Uncanny Valley by Anna Wiener. This is a book sort of chronicling her days in the Silicon Valley startup world. She actually worked for GitHub back when it was pretty small and sort of managed their growth. And it's just a really beautifully written story about this like subset niche of people, which I really like. I find that very interesting. It talks a lot about tech culture and startup culture and how it sort of excludes women and people of color, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's been on a lot of best book of the year lists, which was kind of surprising to me because it didn't feel like anyone else had really read it, and I loved it so much, so I think more people should read it. So I hope there's a few recommendations in there for you. If you have, your favorite nonfiction book that you want to leave in the comments, please do, and thanks for hanging out, y'all.